The night was quiet at the Deep Space Listening Array in New Mexico. Most of the staff had gone home, but Dr. Olivia Watson remained. She always stayed late on Thursdays. The soft glow of computer screens lit her face as she sipped her cold coffee. A small beep from her computer made her look up. At first, she thought it was nothing, just space noise. But then it came again, and again. A pattern. Olivia sat up straight. Her hands moved quickly across the keyboard as she tried to track the signal. It was coming from the Tau CD system, about 12 light years from Earth. Not too far in space terms. This can't be right, she whispered to herself. She picked up her phone and called her colleague. Alan, you need to get down here right now. Dr. Alan Murphy arrived 30 minutes later, his hair messy and eyes still sleepy. This better be good, Liv. It's 2 a.m. Listen to this, Olivia said, and played the recording. The sound that came from the speakers wasn't like normal space signals. It had rhythm, pauses, what sounded like words, and underneath it all, something that made both scientists' skin crawl, sounds that reminded them of pain, of fear. Is that crying? Ellen asked, now fully awake. I think someone out there is asking for help, Olivia said. Over the next week, they worked nonstop. Alan was the best linguist NASA had, and even he struggled to make sense of the alien language. But slowly, patterns emerged. Words formed. Meaning took shape. They call themselves the Nilari. Alan explained to the emergency meeting of scientists and government officials. They're sending this message to anyone who might hear it. The Vrax Dominion, another alien race, is attacking their worlds, killing them, enslaving them. He played translated sections of the message. The room fell silent as they listened to descriptions of entire cities being destroyed, children taken for experiments, a peaceful race being systematically wiped out. How do we know this is real? Asked one official. This could be some kind of trick. The pain in those voices is real, Olivia said firmly. And the signal has been repeating for years, based on how long it took to reach us. This isn't a trick. It's a desperate cry for help. The news spread quickly once the government released it. Television stations played parts of the message. Internet sites crashed as people downloaded and shared the recordings. Some people were scared. Others demanded action. In living rooms across Earth, families listened to the Nilari begging for someone, anyone, to save them. In a small apartment in Boston, Navy Admiral John Blackwood watched the news with a dark expression. His phone rang. Yes, Mr. President. I'll be there in an hour. At the United Nations in New York, emergency meetings were called. For once, countries weren't fighting each other. They were all focused on the stars, on the knowledge that they weren't alone in the universe, and that someone out there needed their help. Olivia sat in her lab, listening to the message for perhaps the 100th time. We heard you, she said to the empty room. We heard you, and we're coming. On the other side of the world, factories that had built warships began drawing up plans for spacecraft that could travel farther and faster than anything humans had built before. In military bases, soldiers and pilots wondered if their training would help them against an alien enemy. And in the quiet of space, the message continued to play. A lone cry for help that had traveled across stars to reach human ears. The Nilari had no way of knowing that their plea had been heard, or that Earth was stirring in response. They had no way of knowing that humanity's wrath was about to be unleashed on those who had harmed them. The United Nations building had never been so full. Leaders from every country sat together in the large meeting room. Guards stood at every door. No phones were allowed inside. Admiral John Blackwood stood at the front of the room, pointing at images on the big screen behind him. The pictures showed star maps and what scientists thought the Vrax ships might look like, based on the Nilari descriptions. We don't know everything about these Vrax, Blackwood said, but we know enough to be worried. They've destroyed at least 3 planets in the Tau CD system. If they keep expanding, they'll eventually find Earth. The room was quiet. No one liked what they were hearing. "So what do you suggest, Admiral?" asked the UN Secretary. "We can barely reach our own moon. How can we help aliens 12 light years away?" Blackwood nodded to a woman in the corner. She stepped forward with a folder of papers. "This is Dr. Ellen Wright, our lead scientist on the new drive system," Blackwood said. "Doctor, please explain." Ellen cleared her throat. "We've been working on faster-than-light travel for 15 years in secret. The Horizon Project. We've had success in the lab, but never tested it in space. With proper funding, we could have ships ready in 8 months." The Chinese president stood up. "And weapons? What good are fast ships if they cannot fight?" "We've been developing energy weapons as well," Blackwood replied. "Again, with full funding and cooperation, we can arm these ships." Arguments broke out around the room. Some leaders wanted to hide, to hope the wracks never found Earth. Others demanded immediate action. The debate lasted for hours. Finally, the U.S. president stood. The room fell silent. "We've all heard the Nilari message," he said. "We've all heard the sounds of their children crying. Throughout human history, we've made many mistakes. We've fought each other. We've ignored those in need. But today, we have a chance to be better, to show the universe what humanity stands for." He looked around the room. "I'm committing all necessary resources to this mission. Who will join us?" One by one, other leaders stood. Not all, but enough. The Aegis Initiative was approved with a vote of 142 countries in favor. Later that evening, in a smaller room, military leaders met to plan the details. Captain Lisa Reeves sat quietly, listening to the others argue about ships and weapons. At 42, she had commanded 3 naval vessels and 1 space station. Her dark hair was streaked with gray, her face lined from years of making hard decisions. "Who will lead this fleet?" someone asked. All eyes turned to Admiral Blackwood. He looked at Lisa and nodded. "Captain Reeves will command our flagship, the UES Defender. The fleet will follow her orders." Lisa felt the weight of those words. Billions of lives, human and alien, would depend on her decisions. "I accept," she said simply. "Your XO will be Commander Ben Rodriguez," Blackwood continued. "He's young but brilliant, Harvard-educated, top of his class at the academy." After the meeting, Lisa stood by the window, looking at the stars. Ben Rodriguez joined her. He was tall with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Scared, Captain?" he asked. "Terrified," Lisa admitted, "but also ready." "You?" Ben smiled slightly. "Same. But I keep thinking about those Nilari, waiting for help that they don't even know is coming." Lisa nodded. 8 months to build a fleet, then 8 months to reach them. That's a long time to wait when you're fighting for survival. "We'll get there," Ben said firmly. In factories and labs around the world, work began. Scientists shared secrets they had kept for decades. Engineers worked day and night. Military personnel trained for combat situations no human had ever faced. And in space, 12 light years away, the Nilari continued to fight, unaware that their message had been heard, unaware that humanity was coming. The day of launch came faster than anyone expected. 8 months of non-stop work had produced 7 ships, each named to reflect humanity's resolve. Defender, Vanguard, Dauntless, Sentinel, Valiant, Guardian, and Intrepid. They waited in orbit, their sleek hulls reflecting Earth's blue glow. Crowds gathered in cities worldwide to watch the launch on giant screens. The Aegis fleet carried the hopes of all humanity. Captain Lisa Reeves stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, looking at her crew. They were the best from around the world. Russian engineers working alongside American tactical officers, Chinese weapons experts next to Brazilian navigators. For this mission, old rivalries had been set aside. "All systems check complete, Captain," reported Commander Ben Rodriguez. "The fleet is ready for jump." Lisa nodded and pressed the ship-wide communication button. "This is Captain Reeves to all crew. In 5 minutes, we will make our first faster-than-light jump. We're heading into unknown danger to help a people we've never met. I can't promise we'll all return, but I can promise that what we do today will be remembered forever. Humanity has heard a cry for help, and we answered." She paused, then added softly, "Let's bring some justice to the stars." The countdown began. Engineers monitored the new engines nervously. This would be their first real test. Jump in 3, 2, 1. A flash of light enveloped each ship. The stars blurred. Then darkness. When the view screens cleared, Earth was gone. They had jumped nearly 2 light years in an instant. The bridge crew cheered. "It worked," Ben exclaimed. "We'll reach Tau City in just 4 more jumps." Lisa smiled briefly. "Let's make sure the whole fleet made it safely before we celebrate." All 7 ships had survived the jump, though the Guardian reported minor damage to its sensor array. Repairs would be made before the next jump. During the 8-month journey, with stops to cool the engines between jumps, the crew trained constantly. In the ship's large training room, Major William Hayes ran combat drills daily. "The Vraks will be bigger and stronger than us, according to the Nilari messages," he told his security teams as they practiced with new energy weapons, "but we'll be faster and smarter." In another section of the ship, engineer Samantha Foster worked on the engines. Her hands moved quickly over the complex machinery, but her mind was often elsewhere, thinking of her brother Jack, who had died when his space station exploded 3 years ago. He would have loved this mission, she told Communications Officer Ryan Miller one evening in the mess hall. Ryan was young, just 26, with bright eyes that hadn't yet seen real combat. "Were you and your brother close?" Ryan asked. Samantha nodded. "He's the reason I became an engineer. I used to help him fix his car when we were kids." She looked out at the stars. "I'm doing this for him, in a way, helping others like he always did." In his quarters, Security Chief Peter Keller woke from another nightmare. He'd seen too much fighting in the Middle East conflicts. Now he was heading toward more violence, though for a better cause. He splashed water on his face and tried to steady his shaking hands. The ship's doctor, Kevin Phillips, noticed Keller's struggles but said nothing. He simply made sure the security chief had access to sleeping aids and invited him to weekly chess games, a quiet way to offer support. As they approached the final jump point, Captain Reeves called her senior officers to the bridge. "The Nilari don't know we're coming," she reminded them, "and the Vraks don't know humans exist. We'll use that surprise to our advantage." She looked at each of them, Ben, William, Samantha, Peter, Ryan, Kevin, and saw determination in their eyes. "One more jump," she said, "and then we show the Vraks what happens when they hurt innocent people." The final countdown began. The Tau Ceti system awaited. The Aegis fleet emerged from their final jump into the Tau Ceti system. What they saw made even the most hardened officers fall silent. The Nilari homeworld hung in space, once beautiful but now scared. Massive ships orbited the planet. They were ugly things, built for function rather than beauty. Giant drills extended from their hulls, boring into the planet below. Smoke rose from the surface, visible even from space. "Scan for life signs," Captain Lisa ordered, her voice tight. "Millions on the planet," Ryan reported from his communication station. "But the readings show high levels of distress. They're suffering, Captain." Lisa's hands gripped her chair. "Are we being scanned?" "Negative," Ben replied. "The Vraks don't seem to have noticed us yet. We're at the edge of the system, and their technology appears focused on resource extraction, not defense." "Good," Lisa said. "We need to make contact with the Nilari resistance before we reveal ourselves to the Vraks." A plan formed quickly. Commander Rodriguez would lead a small team to the surface using a stealth shuttle. They would locate the Nilari resistance and establish contact. "Be careful," Lisa told Ben as he prepared to leave. "This is first contact with an alien species. Try not to start a war before we're ready." Ben smiled grimly. "I'll do my best, Captain." The stealth shuttle slipped past Vrax patrols with ease. Earth's cloaking technology worked better than expected. They landed in a dense forest area where scans had detected a concentration of Nilari life signs away from Vrax patrols. Ben led his team out of the shuttle. Lieutenant Diane Washington, a former Marine, took point. Dr. Kevin Phillips followed, carrying medical supplies. 2 security officers guarded the rear. The forest was strange to human eyes. The trees had purple leaves and twisted trunks, but it provided good cover. They moved quietly through the underbrush, following their scanner readings. Suddenly, Diane held up her hand, signaling them to stop. Voices came from ahead, high-pitched and musical, speaking in a language the humans didn't understand. Their translation devices would need direct contact to begin learning the Nilari language. "Friendly approach," Ben ordered. "Weapons down." They stepped into a clearing and found themselves facing a group of tall, slender beings with pale blue skin and large, expressive eyes. The Nilari froze at the sight of the humans. One Nilari stepped forward, taller than the others. Markings on its face suggested authority or rank. "We come from Earth," Ben said clearly, knowing his words wouldn't be understood yet. "We received your message. We're here to help." The lead Nilari's eyes widened. It touched its chest and spoke one word: Elanval. Kevin activated his translation device, recording and analyzing the speech patterns. After a few minutes of careful exchange, basic communication became possible. "You?" came from Stars. Elanval asked through the translator. "You heard our cry?" "Yes," Ben replied. "We heard your message. We've come to help fight the Vrax." Tears formed in Elanval's large eyes. "No one has ever come. We thought we would die alone." Before they could talk further, a harsh sound cut through the forest. Vrax patrol ships flew overhead. The Nilari scattered in fear, but Elanval grabbed Ben's arm. "Come. Vrax hunt children today." The humans followed Elanval through the forest to the edge of a settlement. What they saw filled them with rage. Vrax soldiers, massive creatures with gray armored skin and 4 arms, were rounding up Nilari children. The young Nilari cried out as they were forced into transport vehicles. "Harvest camp," Elanval explained, voice breaking. "Children never return." Lieutenant Diane looked at Ben, her face hard. "Commander, we can't just watch this." Ben knew direct intervention would reveal their presence to the Vrax. But as he watched a small Nilari child being dragged away, screaming for its parent, he made his decision. "Defensive positions," he ordered. "Lieutenant Washington, you're with me. We're getting those kids out." "This will start the war," Kevin warned. Ben checked his weapon. The war started when they answered a cry for help with cruelty. Now they'll learn what happens when you make humanity angry. The news of the rescue spread quickly through the Vrax command. War Duke Crozar, the regional commander of Vrax forces, stood on his command ship and watched the recording of the unknown beings attacking his soldiers. These creatures were small, but they had moved with surprising speed and skill. They had killed 12 Vrax warriors and freed 30 Nilari children. "Find them," he ordered his officers. "Find them and bring me one alive. I want to know what species dares to interfere with Vrax business." He turned to his second-in-command. "Double the harvesting schedule. If these newcomers want to help the Nilari, let them watch as we speed up their extinction." Back at the Nilari hidden camp, Ben sent an urgent message to the fleet. Captain Lisa listened with growing concern as he explained what had happened. "The Vrax are responding with increased aggression," Ben reported. "They're stepping up attacks on Nilari settlements. We need to move quickly." Lisa faced a difficult choice. The original plan was to stay hidden longer, gather more intelligence, and wait for the second fleet from Earth to arrive in 3 months. But the Nilari might not have 3 months. She called her officers together. "Options." Major William Hayes spoke first. "We have surprise on our side, Captain. The Vraks don't know our capabilities. We should use that advantage before they figure out how few ships we actually have." "I agree," said Samantha Foster. "Their technology is advanced, but I've been analyzing their ships. Their weapons systems have weaknesses we can exploit." Lisa looked at each officer in turn. They all nodded. "Very well," she said. "We fight now." On the planet, Dr. Kevin Phillips worked with Nilari healers to treat injured refugees. He noticed something interesting about Vrak's biological samples recovered from the rescue mission. "Their cellular structure is unusual," he told Ben. "They're extremely sensitive to certain frequencies of sound. It might give us a weapon." Meanwhile, Intelligence Officer Nancy Taylor led a small team with Nilari resistance fighters to infiltrate a Vrak's command post. Moving silently through service tunnels beneath the facility, they'd reached the central computer room. Nancy had a gift for systems analysis. Within minutes, she was downloading Vrak's fleet information, communication protocols, and strategic plans. "We need to get this back to the fleet," she whispered to her team. "This tells us everything: where their ships are, how they communicate, what their next targets are." As they slipped out of the command post, alarms began to sound. They had been discovered. "Run," ordered Nancy. They fled through the tunnels, Vrak's soldiers in pursuit. One of the Nilari fighters fell, hit by Vrak's fire. Nancy stopped to help but was pulled away by another team member. "Too late," the human soldier said grimly. "We need to get this data out." They reached the extraction point just as Vrak's forces surrounded them. It seemed hopeless until the sky lit up with weapon fire. The UES Valiant had moved into low orbit, providing cover fire while the shuttle swooped down to retrieve the team. Back on the Defender, Captain Lisa studied the stolen data. It confirmed what they feared. War Duke Crozar had called for reinforcements. 3 Vrak's dreadnoughts were heading to the system. "How long do we have?" she asked. 4 days, Ben replied. Lisa made her decision. "We evacuate as many Nilari civilians as possible to the moons of the outer planets. Establish defense stations there. Then we hit the Vraks hard before their reinforcements arrive." She turned to Engineer Samantha. "You said their weapons have weaknesses. Can you exploit them?" Samantha nodded confidently. "Give me 2 days. I'll create a virus that disrupts their targeting systems." Across the Ta-Ceti system, the human fleet prepared for battle. Ships moved into position. Ground teams worked with Nilari fighters to identify key targets. And on his command ship, War Duke Crozar watched with growing confusion as his sensors detected increasing activity. These strange new creatures were not running. They were not hiding. They were preparing to attack. Major William Hayes named it Operation Thunderbolt. It began with a series of small, precise strikes on Vrak supply ships. The UES Vanguard and UES Guardian attacked from different directions, firing quickly and then jumping away before the Vraks could respond. Aboard the UES Defender, Captain Lisa watched the battle displays. "Status report: 3 Vraks supply ships destroyed," Ben replied. "No damage to our vessels. They still don't understand what's happening." Lisa nodded. "Begin Phase 2. Phase 2 targeted the Vrak's communication network. The humans had studied the data Nancy's team stole and identified 6 relay stations that connected the Vrak's forces. Without these stations, the Vrak's ships wouldn't be able to coordinate their attacks. Engineer Samantha had been working nonstop for 2 days. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, but she smiled as she activated her program. "Virus deployed, Captain. It will spread through their targeting systems each time they try to lock onto our ships." Down on the planet, teams of humans and Nilari fighters attacked Vrak's ground bases. Lieutenant Diane led one such team, moving through the shadows toward a large installation. "Remember," she told her fighters, "hit fast and get out. We're not trying to hold ground yet." They planted explosives around the base's power generators. As they retreated into the forest, the night sky lit up with the explosion. Cheers came from the Nilari fighters. For many, It was the first victory they had ever seen against their oppressors. War Duke Crozar was furious. Reports of attacks came from all directions. His ships couldn't lock their weapons properly. His communication stations weren't responding. "Find them," he roared at his officers. "Find their main ship." The Vracs launched all their fighters, searching desperately for the human fleet. They finally located the UES Dauntless as it finished destroying the communication relay. 5 Vracs battleships surrounded the human vessel. Their first volley damaged the Dauntless severely. "Captain," called the communications officer on the Defender. "The Dauntless is under heavy fire." Captain Frank reports engine damage. "They can't jump out." Lisa made a quick decision. Move the Defender and Sentinel to assist. The rest of the fleet continues with their assigned targets. The Defender arrived just as a second Vracs volley hit the Dauntless. The smaller human ship was clearly in trouble, with fires visible through breaches in its hull. "Get our people off that ship," Lisa ordered. Rescue shuttles launched from the Defender, racing toward the crippled vessel. The Sentinel provided covering fire, drawing some of the Vracs ships away. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Captain Frank Lee made a difficult choice. "Evacuate all personnel," he ordered. Then set the ship for manual control. Once his crew was safely away, Frank plotted a new course, directly toward the largest Vracs ground installation on the planet. "This is Captain Lee to Defender," he said calmly over the communication link. "Tell Earth I did my duty." Lisa watched helplessly as the burning Dauntless accelerated toward the planet. Vracs ships fired at it, but Samantha's virus made their targeting systems unreliable. The Dauntless crashed into the Vracs installation at full speed. The explosion was visible from orbit, a bright flash that destroyed the installation and the surrounding Vracs forces. On another part of the planet, Ryan Miller's shuttle was shot down while trying to extract a ground team. Cut off behind enemy lines, they were surrounded by Vracs patrols. "We need to reach that ridge," the team leader told Ryan, pointing to a distant hill. "There's a Nilari camp there with a communication device, but the valley between is crawling with Vracs." Ryan studied his scanner, then noticed something about the Vracs patrol patterns. "Wait, they're following a schedule. There's a gap in their coverage every 6 minutes." Using Ryan's observation, they timed their movements perfectly, slipping past Vracs patrols and reaching the ridge safely. Back in orbit, the first day of Operation Thunderbolt ended. The humans had lost the Dauntless and a dozen smaller craft, but the Vracs had lost far more. War Duke Crozar stared at the battle reports in disbelief. No species had ever challenged the Vracs' dominion so effectively. For the first time in his long military career, he felt something new: doubt. "What are these humans?" he asked quietly. 3 days after Operation Thunderbolt began, the Vracs reinforcements arrived. 3 massive dreadnoughts, each 5 times the size of the Defender, appeared at the edge of the system. War Duke Crozar felt his confidence return as he watched them approach on his monitors. "Now we will crush these humans," he told his officers. "Prepare all forces for a final attack." On the Defender, the mood was grim. Captain Lisa studied the scans of the new Vracs ships. "We can't match that firepower," Ben said, stating what everyone was thinking. "Then we don't try to match it," Lisa replied. "We find another way." Dr. Alan Murphy, who had come with the fleet to continue studying the Nilari language, made a surprising discovery while working with the Nilari elders. "Captain, the Nilari have latent telepathic abilities," he reported excitedly. "The Vracs have been using technology to suppress this talent for generations. If we can disable those suppression fields, the Nilari could communicate instantly across great distances." Lisa immediately saw the potential. Could they warn us of Vracs' movements? Better than that, Alan said. They could create a kind of early warning network. We'd know exactly when and where the Vracs plan to attack. While Alan worked with the Nilari elders to develop their abilities, Security Chief Peter Keller trained groups of Nilari fighters. Despite his own traumatic memories of war, Peter found purpose in teaching these gentle aliens how to defend themselves. You don't need to be bigger or stronger, he told them as they practiced in a hidden valley. You need to be smarter, hit where they don't expect, then disappear before they can respond. The Nilari learned quickly. Soon, small bands of resistance fighters were disrupting Vrax's operations across the planet. War Duke Crozar grew increasingly frustrated as his forces kept meeting unexpected resistance. The humans were challenging enough, but now the normally passive Nilari were fighting back as well. Enough games, he decided. We will use the dreadnoughts to attack their main base. We will crush them all at once. What Crozar didn't know was that the newly awakened Nilari telepathic network detected his plan immediately. Captain Lisa had hours to prepare a response. We can't win a direct fight against those dreadnoughts, she told her officers, but we might be able to turn their strength against them. The plan was dangerous. They would use the damaged UES Sentinel as bait, making it appear vulnerable. When the Vrax dreadnoughts moved to attack, the Sentinel would lead them into an asteroid field that Major Hayes and his team had secretly filled with nuclear mines. Who will pilot the Sentinel? Ben asked quietly. I will, Lisa replied. Ben shook his head firmly. No, Captain. The fleet needs you. I'll take the Sentinel. Before Lisa could argue, a message came from the planet. Elon Vel, speaking for the Nilari resistance, offered another solution. We have captured a Vrax shuttle, the Nilari leader said. We can use it to approach the dreadnoughts without suspicion. My people volunteer to deliver your explosives directly. Lisa was torn. She didn't want to risk Nilari lives, but she also recognized their right to fight for their own world. The decisive battle began when the 3 Vrax dreadnoughts moved toward the main human Nilari stronghold on the planet's northern continent. Just as they entered weapons range, the captured Vrax shuttle approached the lead dreadnought, sending correct identification codes. At the same moment, Nilari fighters and human soldiers launched coordinated ground assaults on key Vrax positions. The fighting was intense, with both sides taking heavy losses. On the lead dreadnought, War Duke Crozar was shocked when alarms suddenly blared. The shuttle had attached itself to the ship's hull and detonated multiple explosives, causing critical damage. As the dreadnought began to list to one side, the asteroid field erupted with nuclear explosions, engulfing the other 2 capital ships. On the ground, human Nilari forces fought their way into the main Vrax command center. Security Chief Peter led the final assault, pushing through waves of Vrax defenders. In the command center, they found something unexpected. War Duke Crozar himself, injured but alive. The Vrax commander had escaped his dreadnought moments before the explosion. Peter looked at the alien leader who had caused so much suffering. It's over, he said simply. Your forces are in disarray. Your ships are destroyed. Crozar stared at the human in disbelief. How? How did lesser beings defeat the Vrax Dominion? Peter's answer was calm. You should have never hurt people who couldn't fight back. You never know who might come to help them. 2 weeks after the capture of War Duke Crozar, the remaining Vrax ships fled the Ta Ceti system. Without leadership and with their main forces destroyed, they scattered back toward Vrax space. Liberation teams of humans and Nilari moved across the planet, freeing camps where Nilari had been held prisoner. What they found in these places filled them with horror and strengthened their resolve. The Vrax had conducted cruel experiments on Nilari prisoners. They had worked many to death extracting resources from their own planet. We can't let this happen anywhere else, Captain Lisa said as she viewed the reports. Her face was tired but determined. The Vrax will rebuild their forces and return, or they'll find other worlds to victimize. 3 days later, a fleet of ships appeared at the edge of the system. For a moment, everyone feared the Vrax had returned with more forces. But these were Earth ships, the Second Fleet, led by Admiral Blackwood himself. The Admiral came aboard the Defender and hugged Lisa, his former student. Well done, Captain, he said. Earth is proud of what you've accomplished here. They walked through the ship, discussing what had happened and what would come next. The UN Security Council has reviewed your reports, Blackwood told her. They've authorized a broader campaign against the Vrax Dominion. We'll take the fight to their core worlds if necessary. What they've done here can't be tolerated. On the planet, healing began. Dr. Kevin worked with Nilari healers to treat the injured and sick. The Nilari began rebuilding their cities, incorporating human technology to make them stronger than before. Engineer Samantha installed improved defense systems around the planet. Next time they come, she promised Elanval, they won't get past the outer moons. The Nilari leader touched Samantha's hand gently. There is a saying among my people, those who stand alone fall alone. We stood alone for too long. No more. In a quiet valley, a ceremony took place honoring those who had died, both human and Nilari. Captain Frank Lee's name was read aloud, along with every human who had fallen. The Nilari sang songs for their dead, haunting melodies that made even the toughest soldiers weep. Captain Lisa and Elanvel signed a formal alliance between Earth and the Nilari world. It was the first interspecies treaty in human history. This is just the beginning, Lisa said at the signing. Together, we'll build something that will last for generations. In a hospital room, Dr. Kevin checked on a young Nilari child who had been rescued from one of the worst camps. The child had been close to death when found, but was now recovering. Why did you come? The child asked him suddenly. Why did humans travel so far to help us? You didn't know us. Kevin sat beside the bed, thinking carefully about his answer. How could he explain humanity to someone who had never seen Earth? We heard you calling for help, he said simply. And humans, well, we can't ignore a cry for help. It's not in our nature. But you risked so much, the child insisted. Many of you died for us. Kevin nodded. That's also part of being human. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. And what the Vrax haven't figured out yet is that there's nothing more dangerous in the universe than humans defending the innocent. As the Earth's second fleet took positions throughout the system, Admiral Blackwood and Captain Lisa stood on the bridge of the Defender, looking at star charts that showed Vrax territory. Ready for the next phase? Blackwood asked. Lisa nodded. The Vrax had started this when they attacked a peaceful race. They had continued it when they ignored the Nilari pleas for mercy. Now they would learn what happened when humanity's wrath was fully unleashed. The Nilari sent out a cry for help, she said quietly. We answered, and we'll keep answering until the Vrax understand that no species should live in fear. Beyond the viewports, Earth ships and newly built Nilari vessels prepared for the coming campaign. The stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if in approval of this new alliance. Together, they would bring justice to the stars.